I think of franchising a lot like a marriage. They're long relationships. They're pretty close, right? Like you get pretty close with your franchisor and their teams and all of that. And so there's two things that I often tell candidates to get comfortable with. One of them is get to know who it is you're about to go into business with.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of Fran Coach's Franchising 101 podcast. I am Tim Parmeter, founder and CEO of Fran Coach and your podcast host. Today, we are going to have a guest join us. So one of our franchise partners, a new brand, but one of the things that you'll see in franchising a lot, even newer brands come with decades of experience in franchising or in a particular industry. And that's definitely the case with this. And it is a brand in an industry that is booming, no pun intended, and offering services that sometimes we don't realize are out there or how needed they are. So excited to chat with our guest today and learn a little bit more. First, as always, a quick reminder of who we are at Fran Coach before we get to our guest. Fran Coach is the premier franchise consulting firm. Our number one goal is to properly educate you on franchise ownership to determine if you should own one. And if so, we're going to help you find your absolute best fit. Our educational approach ensures we focus on the client's best interest. We are not here to sell you a franchise. In fact, we don't sell anything. Finding the best franchise to own is an incredibly personalized and individualized process that can only work with a team of experts focused on what is truly most important. That's you. Fran Coach, our services are always 100% free to use, so reach out to our team. Click the QR code or find us at francoach.net. Now, let's get back to the show. All right. Hey, we are back on the Franchising 101 podcast, and joining us today is our guest is the CEO of Liftology, Mr. Dave Pazgan. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Tim, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
We are, well, don't say that yet. You just got here. It may be awful. So you never know how this.
I presume it'll be great to be here.
We hope so. If not, there's editing for that. So, hey, Dave, we're really excited to talk about Liftology and all the different pieces within what this brand does, kind of that ideal owner and a lot of the support you guys are giving. But franchising is a people business. I love hearing stories. Give everybody a little bit about your background and even kind of how you got into this crazy world of franchising.
Yeah. Well, thanks. So my first brush with franchising was all the way back in 1990. I became a franchise owner while I was in college of a brand called College Pro Painters. Do you remember that brand?
I do. That's great.
Guy was running that company by the name of Charlie Chase back then, and I think he's since retired. But they went on to build CertaPro and some other brands. But I was a College Pro franchisee for 2 summers in Cleveland, Ohio, and so that was kind of my first exposure to franchising. And I learned 2 things about myself in that experiment. The first thing that I learned was that I was pretty good at sales. Like I had no trouble selling paint jobs and developing relationships with customers and all of that. So that was a good learning experience. The other thing that I learned is I'm terrible at operations. And so it's been something that I've had carried around with me ever since, because I've been in a lot of different executive roles over the years. And I've always kind of said to myself, just remember, put people around you that can keep the trains running on time, because I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. And I learned that all the way back when I was 19 years old, and I started my College Pro Painter franchise. So that was kind of fun. And then I wasn't in franchising for the first part of my post-college career. I was in mortgage banking. I spent about 13 years in the mortgage banking industry, ended up running one of the bigger national lenders that were part of the non-conforming or subprime bubble. So you can guess how that ended. If you've seen The Big Short, you'll probably know a little bit about that. So I was kind of in the middle of that, but I was running a company called Novastar Mortgage. I had started there as an account executive, wholesale, meaning that I was calling on mortgage brokers as my first job there. And I just went through a bunch of different positions and ended up as the president of that company in 2005. And then in 2007, it went away. And it was a pretty big implosion. I mean, worldwide, right? But even my company was, we had 4,000 employees and we were doing well over $1 billion a month of loans origination. So it had gotten pretty big, but it ended badly. And so actually that's what led me to franchising. So from there were two guys that I worked with at that company. One of them was my national sales manager. Another one was one of our top performing sales representatives. They both lived in Wilmington, North Carolina, and started up a company that became a brand called 101 Mobility. And they started it a few months before I got involved under a different name and so on. And they were just selling and installing stair lifts and ramps and things like that in the local area. And then they reached out to me after a few months and said, hey, we think we're onto something. This industry has a lot of potential. There aren't any companies that really operate nationally. It's just a patchwork of local dealers and installers. And we think we could make a play here. We want you to join us and help us figure it out. So I did that. And so we became 101 Mobility in 2000 and 2008. We franchised it in 2010, and it ended up working out really well. It was like the first franchise in that industry. No one had really franchised the business of selling primarily stair lifts and then also other types of lifts and ramps and so on. It was a little bit of an experiment, but it ended up working out really well. In fact, all of the franchises we awarded our first year in 2010 are still there today, 15 years later, which is really kind of amazing if you think about the fact that it was a new concept and, you know, a new franchise run by people that knew nothing about franchising. So ended up going well. And that company has gone on to continue to do well. They have about 100 locations now. I was there until 2020 and left in 2020, and I stayed in franchising. I helped the founder of a youth sports franchise put some pieces together and get some scale for a few years. And then a little over a year ago, I handed the CEO role back over to the founder there. And I turned my attention back to the access and mobility industry because for a few reasons. One of them was that I missed the business. Like, we built really fun relationships with our franchise owners, with suppliers and all of that. And I kind of missed it. And I felt like it would be fun to get back in. The other thing was that, like many people recognize, the impending silver tsunami is upon us. So the aging baby boomer cohort, you know, that first baby boomer group is turning 80 this year, and there's a lot of them. And so our industry is preparing for some pretty meaningful growth over the next decade or so, 2 decades or so. So I felt like that was an opportunity. And then, you know, the third one was really just more related to franchising in general. You know, 101 Mobility had sold pretty much all of the available territory up around the country out. There was another company that started up behind us called Next Day Access, and they had sold out most of their territory. And then there hasn't really been another company to kind of enter that void. So you've got an industry that's growing a lot. It's now starting to favor national organized competitors, in particular franchises. And, you know, the sort of 2 bigger ones out there were largely out of territory. And so, you know, what next? And so I felt like, you know, if anybody could bring a new franchise brand to the market, I'd probably be a guy to do it, just given my history in the industry. So I reached out to a key supplier to the industry, a company called Bruno, based out of Wisconsin, and just told them what I was working on and asked them if they'd be willing to partner with me to do that. And they said, yeah, they certainly would, just given our history together. And so I checked that box, and then I reached out to a couple that had been franchise owners at 101 in Dallas, Texas, and had sold their location to the home office right around the time that I left in 2020. They had gotten an unsolicited offer from the private equity firm that owned 101, and it was a pretty attractive offer for them, so they took it. And so they had sold and been out of the business for a few years. And when I reached out to them around this time last year, my timing was good because they were just thinking about, you know, they missed the business too. We're thinking about getting back in. You know, their non-compete after the sale had just expired. And so we decided, and they brought to the table, I guess, for me, something that, you know, I didn't have as much experience with, which was the day-to-day operation of one of these locations. They had scaled up to multiple locations and about 16 employees by the time that they sold. And so, sharp folks that had been there, done that. So we became partners, and we put all the pieces together over the summer and started offering franchises in October of last year. And we've got our first 2 locations now that have come through training. We're docs out on another transaction or 2 now, and we've got a pretty healthy pipeline behind it. So we're off and going.
That's incredibly exciting. I love it. And tell us a little, give us obviously some of the mobility stuff, but talk about Liftology. Kind of what are those kind of products and services that you're offering? And obviously, typically, I'm guessing more of a senior crowd from a demographic standpoint, from a customer standpoint. Talk about that kind of customer profile and all the different products that you have with Liftology.
Yeah, for sure. So the number one product that we offer is called a stair lift. And so you might have remembered that from the movie Up, the cartoon, and the guy was on his stair lift in that movie. Anyway, there's also one in Gremlins. So there's a little bit of movie history with stair lifts. But anyway, stair lifts are a chair that rides up and down a rail that helps people get up and down stairs. That's the number one product in our industry. We expect that it will be the number one product for Liftology. It'll probably make up at least 50% of our revenue. And that product is mostly residential. There are commercial applications, but most of the time it's a residential lift. And it is, as you mentioned, designed for people that have trouble getting up and down the stairs. The vast majority of the end users are people that are aging in place. They want to stay in their home as long as they can. They're looking for ways to stay safe in their own homes. And for people that have homes with basements or 2 stories or split level, or if you're on the coast and you're up some stilts to get up to your house, things like that. So we solve for that with the stair lift as the primary product offering. This probably next biggest category would be aluminum modular wheelchair ramps. And so these are modular extruded wheelchair ramps, both residential and commercial applications. But again, the vast majority of them are residential. And these go in front of people's homes or in their garage or other places to get them in and out of the house in case you have, a set of stairs to get in and out. Or, if you're in the city and you're in like a, brownstone or something, you need some way to get in and out, right? Because you got a flight of stairs to get up there. So that's the second largest category. Similar audience. It's a lot of times people aging in place, although increasingly on the ramp side, we do a lot of work for people that are going through, let's say, an injury from work. So workman's compensation, claim that's being administered by a third-party administration firm. So we work with them to put in ramps. We put in a lot of ramps for veterans through the VA hospital network. So that's another big product line for that application. And then we also do bathroom modifications. So a lot of times that's something as simple as grab bars. You're putting a handful of grab bars around the tub and toilet, which makes it vastly safer for especially elderly people. Most of the falls in the home happen in the bathroom. And so having grab bars can be a really low cost way to increase safety in people's homes. We also do bigger projects there, like tub to shower conversions. So pull out a traditional tub, put in a barrier-free shower that can be accessed with a shower chair. And then the next product line would be overhead patient lifts. So these are lifts that are mounted to the ceiling in someone's home that help more seriously disabled individual, get from transfer from a bed to a wheelchair or throughout the home, in and out of the bathroom, in and out of their bedroom, things along those lines. And so it makes up the bulk of it. There is one last category, which is residential elevators. It's the fastest growing element of our business. A lot of that has to do with the fact that it's become increasingly common to leverage a product called a through the floor elevator, which doesn't require shaftway. So 25 or 30 years ago, anybody that needed or wanted an elevator in their home, pretty much you had to think about it when you were building the house because it needed a shaftway. And most people didn't do that. So these days, these elevator products are able to be put almost anywhere in someone's home, either up and down by a balcony or through the floor. So you cut a hole in their floor and you put the elevator through that, and they don't require shaftway. So, and they're a lot less expensive than a traditional elevator. You don't need like a hydraulics room or anything like that. And so that's become a very fast growing element of our business as well.
Interesting. I almost want a 2-story house now just so you can come put an elevator in for me. So, So cool. Well, talk now a little bit about the owner, and obviously you guys are just getting started with Liftology, but you know this industry really well from past experience. What are some things that you're looking for from an owner in kind of maybe background or traits? And then I want to transition that into kind of things that you're having them do day in, day out as owners.
Yeah, good question. So we have three really specific things that we're looking for our owners. First off is executive mindset and strategic mindset around scaling a real business. Liftology is really not suitable for the truck into truck type of owner. You know, we don't want our owners putting on a tool belt and getting in their work truck every day. You might do a little bit in that in the beginning, you know, when you're getting your feet wet and you're learning the business, but that should fade out pretty quickly. You're going to hire installation technicians that are out doing these installs. So the owners, we want owners that have that scale mindset, that want to scale a meaningful business that, you know, can grow and, you know, continue to serve, you know, a bigger and bigger part of their community over time. And we've seen in our industry that if you do it right, these businesses do scale pretty nicely. So there are several owners at, you know, the bigger franchise brands that have, you know, pretty meaningfully sized businesses today that they've scaled into over time. And that's kind of territory agnostic. It really more depends on the owner than it does the territory, so to speak. So that's part. The second part is that the only way that you get that level of scale is by building referral relationships in your area, in your community. So these would be places like hospitals, rehab centers, Habitat for Humanity, area agencies on aging, you know, all Veterans Administration, you know, a lot of different type of venues and places that we can go. Some of them will be buyers of equipment, and some of them will refer you people that need this equipment. But that stuff doesn't build itself. And many of our, you know, independent competitors are not out building those relationships. And so we want owners that are not afraid of that. They're not afraid to get out from behind a desk, go knock on doors, go talk to people, go do presentations, stand in front of a group of, you know, discharge planners and executives at a hospital and pitch Liftology and what we're all about and why, you know, we're the right place to call when one of their clients has a need. You know, we definitely need that skill set. And so that's a big thing we look for. And then the third one would be team building skills. The only way, again, that you can get meaningful scale is you've got to be able to build a high performing team that you can rely on and lean into as you grow your business. So folks that can build a team that's stable, low turnover, and high performing individuals that get the job done, so that the owner can focus on continuing to grow revenue and not get bogged down in day-to-day operational issues. And that's really the skill set that we're looking for, folks that have that, you know, strong team building mentality. And I would say one last thing, those are kind of the three things that we look for, but the one I would say last overarching thing is really more of a belief than anything else. But our North Star as a company is all around the customer experience. And we believe that you can win on that in a lot of businesses, but also true in this business by doing really just the fundamentals. Answer the phone, take care of people when they need it, you know, be there for your customers when something's not going right, all of those kinds of things. And our industry historically has not done a great job of that. The number of people that have stories about, you know, I needed a lift or a ramp or some sort of equipment for a loved one or family member, and I called 2 or 3 places and nobody called me back, or it took them a while, or I can't get to you for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. You know, we believe that by providing and elevating the customer experience, that can become over time a meaningful competitive advantage. And so we're looking for owners that believe that, like we believe it, because it's really core to who we are as an organization.
What if your 9-to-5 job didn't last forever? What if there was a better way to create professional success, your way, without fear of layoffs or downsizing? What if I told you that it's all possible through franchise ownership? Franchise ownership gives you a proven playbook to execute, so you can be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. But with thousands of franchises out there, how do you know which is the best one for you? That's where FranCoach comes in. FranCoach will help build out your ideal business model based on your talents, skills, and core values. Then use our proprietary knowledge of the franchises to bring curated options based on what you want and then guide you through the vetting process until we find your best match. Individualized, personalized, and 100% free to you. Ready to control your future? Scan the QR code or visit francoach.net and let FranCoach help create your better tomorrow.
Go back to the kind of the team building thing and the staff component. You mentioned you don't really want owners. Owners aren't out there all day doing installations. But talk about that kind of team they need. Obviously, somebody is going to be. So talk about kind of how we get started. It's the owner, and then how many people, what are they doing? What's that look like at the beginning?
Yeah, great question. So to get started, it's a pretty modest footprint. Usually they'll start with the owner doing business development, sales, team building, and then they'll have one lead technician, installation technician, no special skills required. Like everything they need to know, we can teach them. And our manufacturers also have in-house training and they can teach them as well. These products have been refined over a long period of years to the point like our, primary supplier company called Bruno, they've been making stair lifts for over 40 years now. So these products have gotten pretty modular in terms of the way they're put together. And there's been a lot of attention paid to not only reliability and usability of the product, but ease of installation. And so they've tried to make it so that it doesn't require a lot of expertise or training to install one of these properly. So you're looking for that technician that has, good skills with their hands, right? They're good with their hands. They like taking things apart and putting them back together. They're not like me. They're not the guy throwing the wrench 2 minutes into the IKEA thing that I can't build. You're looking for the people that are good at that stuff. The other thing that you're looking for are strong interpersonal skills, because your installation tech is likely to be the one who spends the most time at a customer's home. They may be there for half a day putting a product in. And then also at the end, when that product's installed, they're the one that's going to train the end user on how to use it. So, someone that's there to with the person that could be 85 or 90 years old, and you're teaching them how to use this new thing that they've never used before, it's going to require a little bit of patience and a little bit of empathy. And so you need folks that have that executive presence, that mindset, empathy for others. And then, of course, like any franchise brand, we want good brand representation. So people that are professional, they're clean cut, they look good, they're wearing, our branded apparel, they show up in the branded vehicle, they're respectful, they're not flicking a cigarette off the front porch, those kinds of things, right? Folks that are presentable and represent our brand well. And they're not hard to find because you aren't necessarily looking for that, unique skill set. You're just looking for a character and good mechanical ability and can talk to people. That's kind of the skill set. And then the other key position in the company is the account manager. This is the person that's in the office, taking calls when they come in, greeting customers that might come in the front door, accepting deliveries in the back when they come through, and then also coordinating jobs, scheduling, organizing, ordering product from suppliers, making sure that you've got inventory managed, all of that type of stuff. So you're looking for an individual, again, that doesn't necessarily need any particular type of training, but strong character, organizational skills, and selling skills, because you can sell a lot of these products right over the phone if you know what you're talking about. So people, again, that are patient, they know how to ask questions, they know how to deal with people. And again, they also believe what we believe around the customer experience, and that really matters and can be a competitive advantage. But that person will be like the quarterback of your business. If you get the right operational leader in that account management role, your life as an owner is so much easier because they just keep the trains running on time.
Well, and then it allows you as the owner to do what you need to be doing, which is getting out in the community, building those relationships, right? What kind of location are we looking at to get started with this?
Pretty simple. It's not storefront or retail. So it is flex space, office condo, office warehouse condo type of setup. Light industrial parks. I mean, you want to be presentable enough because you will have some customers come your way, but you don't need any type of strip mall or storefront retail. So it's usually 12 to 1,500 square feet to start, a few hundred square feet of office up front, warehouse in the back. We do ask that our franchise owners have a small showroom. So they're going to have maybe a couple of lifts and a ramp to show people that want to come and try it out first before they buy. So we do ask for that, but that's not a big investment in either dollars or resources or footprint. You can keep that stuff in a pretty small part of your office space. And so that's really what they're looking for. We would recommend usually if you're going to go smaller to start, like 12 or 1300 square feet or something like that, that's fine to get started, but don't lock yourself in for too long of a lease, because if you're successful and you're doing what you're supposed to do, you'll outgrow that pretty quickly. But that's the kind of space that we're looking for.
So just nice enough for people to come in, but not so nice that you're expecting all of your customers to
yeah,
roll
exactly.
in there. Correct.
Yeah. And then of course, we are serving people with disabilities. So have an eye to accessibility, right? You want to be in a place where if someone is in a wheelchair and they need to get into your office, that they can actually get in. And then you have, ADA compliant bathrooms and so on.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, so you're talking about kind of that long-term growth perspective. Do we divide this up kind of, we've got a territory, you've got your kind of office and showroom location. If we have multiple territories, do we need multiple of those showrooms, or can you kind of sometimes
Not
manage?
necessarily, no. I mean, our territories are big to begin with. So our minimum territory size is 500,000 people, but so far all of the territories we've awarded are right around 2 million or a little bigger. So they're pretty big, right? So a lot of markets will have one owner. I think about your sort of very standard size Midwestern cities, right? Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Columbus, Kansas City, St. Louis, those kinds of towns, they'll all be one owner markets. And so you really only need one location. Again, the vast majority of your clients are not coming to your facility. Yeah. You are going to their home. So really what's more important is logistics. Where are we located relative to getting around town? Are we close to a highway? Can we jump on the Beltway and, get all the way around pretty easily and efficiently? Those are some of the more important considerations when you think about your space. When we do get into the bigger cities and there are multiple territories, then, again, maybe be strategic about it. If you've got two contiguous territories in Phoenix, for example, do you really need two locations? Probably not. But you might eventually want to, just almost for logistics reasons. Like it might just be easier from a warehousing and staging standpoint to have two strategically placed locations as opposed to one. But we work with the owners on that. It's not a hard requirement by us. We just try to figure out what makes the most sense.
I think an owner in that situation is going to get to the point where like it's less about the customer coming in. It's about their team going out and how far they are driving. You want to reduce that windshield time, I guess, as much as possible and be in the location much more so. Right. So,
right.
So then I think you talked about this at the beginning with the demographic of this is largely geared towards the senior. And again, this is a booming industry, right? As we just keep getting older, living longer, all of these things and people wanting to stay in their homes versus going somewhere else. Easy to see all the positives with that. What are some things, and just in the industry in general, people come to you and you're talking to a candidate like, geez, Dave, this sounds really good. I can see myself, I can build a team. I can see the need for this. But what's the concern? Is there maybe a typical concern you hear from people looking at this brand?
Yeah. So two things come up frequently. One of them would be people overthink the complexity of the products themselves. Because if you kind of look at it at the surface, it does look intimidating. So you've got, 4 or 5 different major product lines, some of them as complicated as a residential elevator. And I can understand that can be sort of scary if you're unfamiliar or construction or, that kind of world isn't really your world. I could see why that would be intimidating. My answer to that is a couple of things. First of all, they're not nearly as complicated as you might think. For example, Bruno, which is one of our manufacturing partners, they do make elevators, and their elevator training is 1 day. So it's not like a week or 2 weeks or a month, it's a day.
Right.
And so it's not super complicated. The products, again, are these days, very modular, and not complicated to install. So, and we also, the second answer would be don't worry about what you don't need to worry about yet. So when we first start, like, we're not recommending go sell an elevator on day one.
Right.
Let's put in some stair lifts, put in some ramps and some grab bars and some bread and butter stuff. Get your team warmed up a little bit and used to some of these things before we go start putting a commercial lift into a bank, right? Like,
Right.
let's start where we should start and work our way into the more complex product lines. So I think that's my first answer. The second answer, or second question that comes up a lot, is, well, how does Liftology stand to compete with other brands that are already out there? And because people oftentimes, if they're exploring in the industry, they've heard of 101 and they've heard of, Next Day Access and maybe a couple of these others. And they would say, well, how do you expect to compete? They've been around for a lot longer. They have all these locations. They might even have some, brand value and brand recognition at this point. What does Liftology really bring to the table? And I have a couple of things about that I always tell people. One of them is that keep in mind that even though, let's take 101 at 100 locations is probably the biggest, footprint retailer of these products in the country, they're still a relatively small market shareholder, even in the primary product line of stair lifts, because there are thousands of other little companies that sell stair lifts. So, 101 may have 100 locations. There's probably at least 2,500, if not 3,000 companies out there in the US that sell stair lifts. So yeah, there might be one in your backyard, but there's 10 other guys too, right? So really we don't focus on that particular company as a key competitor. We just say, well, how do we compete with the rest of the universe of people in our industry? And there's a couple of key things there. I go back to our North Star as a company around the customer experience. Our industry historically is not great at that. They oftentimes don't answer the phone when it rings. They're hard to get a hold of. Even our suppliers complain about it because all of our manufacturing partners sell only through dealers. So they don't do any direct to consumer, but they generate leads. And so they do get leads from their website and they send those leads out to their dealers. And then the biggest complaint they have about that whole process is that most of the time the dealer never calls the lead.
Right.
We work with a ramp company called National Ramp. They get a lot of leads. And they're not just sending you a raw lead like a customer that inquired, here you go, good luck. They will have talked to that customer. They will have pulled the house up on Google Earth. They will have drawn or designed a ramp, roughly what they think they might be needing. And then probably most importantly, they will have already given them a price range. And so that's with ramping in particular is usually the biggest objection is people have no idea what it's going to cost. And you're telling them $6,000 or $7,000 and it blows their mind, right? So they've already gotten over that hurdle. And the number of times we'll take a lead that's like, go get a check and give it to a dealer. And then they call the customer 3 or 4 days later. Hey, how did XYZ Mobility do with the ramp? Did they help you out? And they go, who? I never heard from anybody. Right. Yeah. So that's a really big problem in our industry. And so we're focused on turning that around. In fact, we have, as part of our company blueprint, what we call our AAA proven process. And the first A stands for answer the damn phone. And we wrote it like that in the document itself on purpose because we wanted to put an exclamation point on it. Because we know that point, that very first step in the customer journey, our competitors are often tripping over themselves right on that very first point because they don't answer the phone. The second A stands for act quickly to assess the need. Because oftentimes what people need is urgent or semi-urgent. Like, their loved one may be coming home in a week or less. And, a lot of times when people are in that situation with a family member that's going through something at a hospital, you're not necessarily thinking that far ahead, right? You're in the moment, you're worried about mom or grandma. And now all of a sudden, she's in recovery, she's coming through rehab, and you're sitting down with the team at the rehab center and they're starting to ask you questions that you haven't thought about. Well, where's mom's bathroom? Where's her bedroom? How's she going to get upstairs? Have you thought about that? Well, now all of a sudden we get the panic call. Hey, mom's coming home on Thursday. We don't know how we're getting her in the house. And right. So you need to be able to be responsive to that. We can't always solve that problem, but we want to be in a position to solve it as often as we can. And then the third A stands for active ownership. We need owners that are going to be actively involved. This does not lend itself to the passive or semi-passive type of franchise. It is not that. If you want to be really successful, like the folks in our industry who have done really well over the years, you need to put yourself in a position to be the local expert on what we do. And that's learning about the products, learning about how they get installed. When you watch one of the more seasoned, like I mentioned, the early adopters at 101 mostly are still there. And when you watch the guy who bought the second franchise we ever awarded there in Philadelphia go out to an evaluation, whether that's a residential stair lift or a big commercial job, everybody buys from him. You want to know why? Because he's such an expert at this point. Like, he knows everything there is to know. He's fumbling around. He automatically already knows what all the issues are, what the permitting process is going to be like, how long it's going to take, all of the various things about that application or installation. He knows. And when you come in with a degree of expertise, it gives people confidence. And, keep in mind that a lot of these products have a big safety component, right? You're putting a human being on them to get them moved around. And so you're oftentimes trying to save $100. You're trying to get the best solution in the shortest amount of time possible with the most amount of safety in mind as possible. And so when you become that expert and you really know this business inside and out, that's when it gets really good.
Yeah. Well, and I think we can go back to the kind of that training component of it, where people might see it's, a little overly technical or just that they don't know anything about it. Is one, remember, you're not the one doing it, but two, you got franchisor training. But if you've got all of those different vendors and it's their product, they are also going to be there to help support you and take the time to make sure, like, it's their name is on it too. They're going to be there to help make sure that you as the owner, you understand it, but your team is properly trained. That's an outstanding added layer of support that your owners are going to get.
It really is. It's kind of, because I've been in different franchise businesses a few times now, and it's kind of unique because we do have essentially an extended support infrastructure across 4 major manufacturing partners. Just in terms of their field sales support alone, you're talking 25 people across 4 companies. They have regional sales reps. And keep in mind, these organizations do not sell to consumers directly. They only sell through dealers. And so their whole job is to support their dealers. And as you can probably imagine, they are underutilized by most of their dealer footprint. Like, they don't get the calls, hey, will you come out in the field with me for a couple of days and let's go knock on some doors? They just don't get that a lot. So, we know that, and we're going to leverage that, as much as we can. And then beyond just the field support, all of these manufacturers, again, they have internal support infrastructure around training, product knowledge, design. For example, when we're designing an overhead patient lift system, you don't have to know much. All you have to do is go in and take some measurements and send it in to the folks at Human Care, and Jerry will take care of you. Like, he will design take all the measurements, and he'll design it and send you exactly what you need. And then when you place the order, it's just as easy, right? All the pieces and parts that may be part of that order are already baked into the design. So you just get that design ordered to spec, and it shows up, and you don't really, all you need to know are, like, what are the key measurements that I need to take here? As far as the actual engineering part, you don't have to know much about that at all. The manufacturers handle all that. And so and that's true across all of our manufacturing partners.
And it sounds like you're going to get them to know them well enough to where, well, it's not company XYZ. It's, oh no, I got to call my guy Jerry over there at the company. So
right.
Also really being able to build those personal relationships as well is, again, kind of goes back to the team building. There's the internal team and there's your external team, which is going to be these manufacturers, right? So,
right.
Love that. Dave, I want to throw one last thing at you here, and thank you so much for all of your time with Liftology. What's maybe one thing that we haven't talked about that you'd really like somebody sitting out there thinking, Jesus, franchising even right for me, let alone is a specific brand? Maybe what's one last little kind of piece of advice you'd like to share with folks?
The biggest advice I can give, I think, and it's almost like a little bit of life advice too. I think of franchising a lot like a marriage. They're long relationships. They're pretty close, right? Like, you get pretty close with your franchisor and their teams and all of that. And so there's two things that I often tell candidates to get comfortable with. One of them is get to know who it is you're about to go into business with. I think a lot of times candidates just assume that the relationship between franchisee and franchisor is always going to be positive and healthy and fun. And they just assume that without actually checking that. And you should check that. The best way to check it is in the validation calls and in the process that you go through as a candidate. Were they there for you? Did they show up? Did they answer all your questions? Did you meet them in person? Did you go hang out with them? Like we all of our meet the team days are in person. We don't do them virtually. And I believe that. I know a lot of brands do, and I think it can be fine. But it's a 10-year agreement, man. Come have dinner. Like, let's go hang out for a day before you decide to jump into bed for 10 years, right? Or maybe longer. Like I said, the 101Zs that we started with, they're all still there 15 years later.
Yeah.
And so that's a key thing. Like, get to know the people that you're about to get into this relationship with, and make sure you feel comfortable with them, that you feel like you can trust them, because it's going to impact your happiness as a franchise in an immense way over time.
Yeah.
And then the other bit of advice that I give people is that if you're in, you're in, right? If the answer is, yep, this is my these are my people, this is my thing, this is what I'm going to do, don't half-ass it. Like, you got to come at it with both barrels, jump in with both feet. Don't try to do this and keep a side hustle or another job, or it's just going to be a distraction. Put your resources into becoming really, really good at it as a franchise owner. Not just good at like the product knowledge and all of that, but all of the aspects of building a strong business. Read books on leadership, educate yourself about how to become a better leader. I've read so many of these books by now, it makes my head spin. And I'm often surprised to hear people in franchising, especially first-time potential franchise candidates. And I'm talking about these, pretty well-known leadership books. And they're like, no, I haven't heard of that one. I've never read any of that stuff. Start reading it, right? Because it's good stuff. And it will teach you what you need to know about good leadership skills. Because without that, you won't be able to build that leveraged team that you need to be able to scale up, and also to be able to like go on vacation for a week and not worry that you're going to come back to your house on fire. Right.
Right.
So those are the kinds. So, but go all in, become the expert, get to know it inside and out. Put in the effort to just become, make it your craft is really the way that I like to think about it.
No, I love it, especially getting to know the people within the franchisor. I think that's not talked about it. People think of all the other things they've got to learn, or they'll get caught up in the FDD, which is not particularly helpful in this. This is a people business. The people you are around every day as an owner, your staff, your customers in the community. And then what about the people in the franchisor, right? Like, do I feel like I am in the right room with them? Because you're not always going to agree on every last thing, but if you can build the trust, you feel like they know what they're doing and they're going to have your back. It's pretty hard to mess it up unless you do what you just said. Like, if you half-ass it, you're going to not work hard. You're not going to follow the plan. It doesn't matter how great it is, but get to know those people, because that becomes your family, right?
Yep, no doubt.
So, Dave, I greatly appreciate your time and coming on today to talk to us about Liftology. Thank you so much for doing so.
Yeah, it was great being here. I appreciate all the thoughtful questions and enjoyed spending some time with you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much. Hey, thanks again for tuning into the Franchising 101 podcast, brought to you by Fran Coach. I hope these episodes continue to educate you on the amazing possibilities that can be achieved through franchise ownership. In between podcast episodes, if you still want to learn more about franchising and the ways in which Fran Coach can help, there are a few places for you to check out. First, tune in to the Franchising 360 show. It is the only nationally syndicated television show about franchising, hosted by me and Danielle Wright. Our TV show airs every Friday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Biz TV. Next, check out the Fran Coach YouTube channel, which is Fran Coach for You. You can find tons of franchise-specific content there. Plus, you can catch past episodes of the Franchising 360 show. If you like to read, we encourage you to check out our book, Becoming a Franchise Owner. You'll never guess what it's about. And finally, when you're ready to take that first personalized step and explore the franchise industry further, please reach out to our amazing team at FranCoach. You can click the QR code or find us at francoach.net. There is never any fee for our service, so let us help you create your better tomorrow.